Attorney General Bill Barr is igniting fresh controversy with comments that some see as a threat to communities of color. Here's Jeff Pegues.
The Attorney General was at a ceremony honoring the work of law enforcement at the Justice Department when he said this about the communities they serve.
They have to start showing more than they do, the respect and support that law enforcement deserves. And if communities don't give that support and respect, they may find themselves without the police protection they need.
Critics like activist DeRay McKesson called those comments a threat aimed at communities of color.
So Barr was using code and language to highlight black and brown communities as the communities that are, quote, critical of police.
Get out the car right now.
Fatal shootings and excessive force by the police, much of it caught on cell phone and body cameras, have prompted widespread protests. And ever since Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer in Ferguson in 2014, departments across the country have tried to improve police-community relations. While the Obama administration pushed for reform of local police forces to curb any potential misconduct, the Trump administration has taken a different approach, one critics argue that favors the police.
This administration has your back.
Vanita Gupta served in the Justice Department under President Obama.
It is wholly irresponsible for the nation's chief law enforcement officer to criticize people who are seeking a better, more fair system as being anti-police.
Jeff Pegues joins us. So is the Department of Justice walking back any of these comments by the Attorney General?
No, the AG is standing by those comments. We reached out to DOJ to see if they wanted to clarify. They didn't. Now, I did talk to law enforcement sources, and while they weren't comfortable with Barr's language, they did acknowledge that this is a tough environment for police departments across the country right now. In fact, they're all having a hard time recruiting.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
A few days ago, while speaking at a ceremony for the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service in Policing, William Barr, America's top law enforcement officer, suggested that communities who don't show, quote, respect to authority could lose access to police services. Specifically, he said, quote, the American people have to focus on the sacrifice and the service that is given by law enforcement officers, and they must start showing the respect and support that law enforcement deserves, end quote. He then added, if communities don't give that support and respect, they might find themselves without the police protection they need. Now, although he didn't specify which communities he was referring to, his words were taken by many activists and people such as myself as a finger pointed at those that have raised their voices in protest of the treatments they've been subjected to at the hands of the sometimes racially biased law enforcement policies of this nation. Policies such as stop and frisk and the broken window theory, which both resulted in the unjust arrest of thousands of black and Latino men and boys. In other words, our failed policies have eroded and erased the trust with the communities we serve that's necessary to do our job. So instead of rebuilding that trust, we're just not going to do our job. The incredible thing to me is that he actually said it. He was so used to never being challenged, held accountable, or subject to the laws that govern the rest of society, America's top law enforcement officer felt comfortable admitting to picking and choosing who they decide to serve. When he says that, quote, Americans should stop protesting police officers fighting an unrelenting, never-ending fight against criminal predators in our society, he seemed to be suggesting that certain Americans should accept any and all treatments at their hands, even treatment that's been deemed by courts and the rule of law to be against their constitutional rights. An Attorney General of the United States speaking in this fashion should concern everyone in our country, regardless of what communities they come from. His words are disturbing and revealing. They suggest that he doesn't see law enforcement officers for what they are, servants sworn to protect and, more importantly, to serve. And to serve not just those that praise them, but also those that demand accountability as well. His words are disrespectful, and not just to the folks living in those communities, but to the many hundreds, if not thousands of officers who serve them, officers who are living the oaths they have sworn by, those who work daily and in good faith to forge connections and build relationships with the people within those communities. We're going to continue this conversation online. Be sure to keep it locked here for the tree lighting as well. As I mentioned, our very own Annie Yu will be there, and she will be smiling broadly, as you've seen several times throughout the past hour. I'm Reese Waters, and this is my